Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we're talking with John Bisset about generator maintenance. Now that sounds boring, but we got some cool pictures for you and some really good ideas to keep you on the air when the power goes out and make sure your generator runs. Coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, keeping you connected with your community with support and webinars. Online at nautel.com/webinars. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Nashville studios of the Telos Alliance. I call them the Telos Alliance studios because they provide about half the gear in here. Thanks, Telos, and give me an hour off on Thursday afternoons to do This Week in Radio Tech. And so we're going to talk about a really cool subject today, and it's not as mundane as you might think. And I got to tell you, you might think you know everything about it, and you probably don't, unless you have just sat in recently on a seminar taught by our guest. By the way, Chris Tobin couldn't make it here today. He's dealing with some issues at his radio station, so I hope things go well for Chris getting that fixed. So let's go ahead and bring in our guest. He's here. He is comfortable. He's cool. He's calm, collected, and rested. John Bisset. Hey, John, welcome into the show.
Hey, Kirk. How are you? A pleasure to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too. And I see you have a new headset.
I do. And it sounds great. You sound wonderful in it.
Well, you sound good here, too. So on our sales meetings, I hope to see you with the headset on.
Yeah, I'll be using it from now on. Yes, sir, by all means.
Good deal. Hey, John, one thing that we have been doing here on the show for the past 3 months is letting folks know about what's going on with Nautel's Transmission Talk Tuesdays. And these are not just webinars. These are actual roundtable discussions where you, me, anyone gets to participate in asking questions. There's a topic, of course, but you get to ask questions about the topic and get your question answered, hopefully by an expert. It's this coming Tuesday, September the 15th. Now, these go on at 12 noon Eastern Time, 11 Central Time, and that would be 9 a.m. on the West Coast. Jeff Welton will be discussing IP security, and the guest for this Transmission Talk Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, is Wayne Pesina. He's the president of the SBE, and he teaches IT security in Texas at a university. Now, they're not going to focus just on the prevention aspects of IP. We hear a lot of the same things about that over and over again. They're going to be talking about some common sense ways to educate your staff on the need for security, how dangerous it is to click on things, the steps to take, both hardening systems and training employees, because, more than half of this is just getting people to do the right thing, and things to make recovering from the inevitable issues less stressful. And as always, it's an open floor for your input and your questions. Now, you need to register to get in on this roundtable discussion this coming Tuesday, the 15th. Go to nautel.com/webinars, nautel.com/webinars, and register for Transmission Talk Tuesday. They're doing something every Tuesday, but that's the one that is coming up this coming Tuesday. So please check that out. I'm going to be there. Maybe I'll hassle Wayne. No, I won't do that, but I could.
Kirk, that's a good point. Anyone that has not been to an Ennis workshop where Wayne has spoken has really missed a lot. If you have an Ennis workshop in your area or you want to set one of those up, contact Kathy Oros at the SBE and see whether you can get Wayne as one of your speakers, because his presentations are just outstanding.
One of the things I love about Wayne, because I'm the opposite. I'm a man of many words, blah, 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 blah. Wayne is a professional teacher. I mean, he's a professional educator, and he's a man of few words, and his words count. Wayne is very, very specific and thoughtful about his teaching. And you got to pay attention, not because you've got to discern, the wheat from the chaff, but everything he says is valuable, and he says it very distinctly and clearly. He's just a great, great teacher.
Really is. We're very fortunate to have him involved with us, that's for sure.
So, John, Good to have you in. Tell us a little bit about John Bisset. Most people know you as being associated with Telos and
Right.
the columnist for the Workbench column in Radio World. But what else should we know about John Bisset?
Well, I guess being a hands-on engineer before I got into sales, I really enjoyed doing that. Started on the air as a DJ. Funny story, Kirk, probably a lot like you. I saw all of my friends losing their jobs. Other jocks were losing their jobs, and I'm thinking, gee, this is not a very stable career path. So I switched my major from communications to engineering because I noticed that they never fired the engineer. Well, funny how things change these days, right? That is happening to everybody, but doesn't matter what career you're in. But anyway, that got me started off into engineering and played around with a radio station in my home when I was a teenager. Built a radio station with a Lafayette wireless transmitter and added about 100 feet of antenna to the end of the 3-foot antenna that came with the unit. So kind of got me started on engineering. So I guess that would be considered a pirate station. I probably shouldn't be admitting that here.
Yeah. And John, you've had you're in the enviable position where you've done engineering hands-on as a career, but then you've also been involved with the sales side. You've been close to manufacturers, and so you've had to really study all about certain pieces of gear. Aside from the Telos Alliance, you've also worked with a couple other manufacturers. Who have those been?
Yeah. Started out with Delta Electronics. You may remember the OIB and the TCA ammeters, RF ammeters. I started with them, then went into my own contract engineering business with another fellow. We had that for a number of years. Got into selling transmitters for Gates, Harris at the time, then moved over to BE and Nautel, and then Elenos. So I know transmitters pretty well, and the last jump has been over to the Telos Alliance with all of their studio gear. So the AOIP, Axia consoles, codecs, and processing, and so forth.
Yeah, quite a lot to learn. It's like jumping into the fire when you work at the Telos Alliance.
What do they say? You're drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
And I think I was going to say, when people first get into AOIP, especially older folks, and they've never seen this stuff before, and they get into it, it's like it is drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot to learn, but it's so much simpler than what we went through with the analog. And the ability to eliminate all of this noise and crosstalk and problems like that, I mean, man, that's just fantastic, isn't it?
And even if you're a bit younger, I remember I read Steve Church's paper about audio over IP when he first introduced the concept at an NAB show as a white paper. I believe I was 40 years old. It may have been 39, but I believe I was 40 years old. I read that paper, and the first reading of it, it made no sense to me whatsoever. I could not fit. What? But where's the gazintas and where's the gazoutas? What do I wire to what? And I read that paper because I knew this. Steve Church wrote this. It must be important. Let me understand this. Literally read it 5 times. And somewhere through the 5th reading, I went, oh, I get this. Yeah. So it's
finally clicked.
It's clicked. Yeah. So it took a while.
That's great.
So we're talking about generator maintenance. And as I alluded to earlier, that sounds like a boring topic, but it's not. B, we're going to have some fun. And C, we're going to give you advice that'll cover a lot of the most problematic things about generators. A lot of radio stations, studios, and transmitters have generators. You might just have a little pull-out one that you've got to, run the ripcord and plug it in somewhere. There's certainly a lot more safety rules about that kind of thing. And then there's big generators, and there's all sizes in between. So, John, you're going to cover some of the most common things about generators. And we do have a lot of slides to get to, John, and we'll probably spend a little bit of time on each of them. So do you want to, John, just get right into the first slide?
Sure, we can do that. Maybe give a little bit of
Mhm.
background of where this came
Sure.
from.
Yeah.
I was asked to put this together for the SBE mentoring program. And if you're not familiar with the mentoring program, again, something that is a really great idea to get involved in. This is a program where more senior engineers mentor new engineers that are just coming into the industry or have been in for a few years or maybe been on the programming side and want to learn engineering. It's a really neat program, and there are webinars that are set up just for the mentees and mentors. So some of the slides from this presentation came from the SBE mentoring workshop. And if you want more information on that, again, contact Kathy at the SBE headquarters in Indianapolis, and she can get you squared away with that. It's a really neat program. Kirk, that's one of the problems I think we've all had is as we've gotten older, so many younger people didn't have the advantage that we had learning under a sage engineer who had 30 years of experience and was willing to share it all with us. And that's what this mentoring program is trying to do, is to make sure that the knowledge that those of us with the gray hairs have can be passed on to younger engineers and help them.
This is well, and it's changed. The way we mentor people has changed because back when I was a youngin, radio stations and TV stations and large radio groups had a lot of engineers. You might,
Sure.
well, a friend of mine was an engineer for WIND in Chicago, and he had like 5 staff engineers plus himself. Now what it was WIND is probably rolled in with a bunch of other stations, and they have 1.5 engineers if they're lucky. So there used to always be room for an intern to come in and learn the ropes, or just a fresh new employee, somebody just out of radio school, or somebody's taking trade school. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have that benefit of hiring that extra person or even that part-time person. So with the SB's mentoring program, if you're a gray-haired or if you just know what you're doing, you tell the SBE, hey, I'm willing to mentor. That doesn't mean they're going to assign you somebody right away. I've been available as a mentor myself for a couple of years, and Kathy knows that I'm a little bit busy, but if there's a good matchup, they'll contact me. And when they get somebody who's a good match for you, maybe in your area, then they'll introduce you to and see if you're a good match for each other. So it's a good program. Thanks for bringing that up, John.
Sure, sure. Well, you got some pictures.
I do. The first one, it sounds dirty, but it's not. Squeeze your hoses and look for cracks. What do we do? I wouldn't have thought to do this. Well, what's going on?
It is a dirty job. What we're looking at here, Kirk, is the radiator hoses are under a tremendous amount of pressure, and the heat and so forth. That rubber will deteriorate eventually. And what you're doing by squeezing the hose is to look for cracks. And if the hose is stiff and brittle, or if it's stiff and it doesn't give like rubber would normally give, then it's probably saying that, hey, it's time to be replaced. The idea behind this is to make sure that the hose is flexible so it doesn't go bursting on you and you lose all of your coolant. And of course, that's going to happen as the hurricane's running in and you've lost power and you've got to be on the air. So taking a look at problems like this and just give the hose a little bit of a squeeze there. We want to thank J.T. Tucker for demonstrating that. He's here in Cumulus, Charleston, one of the regional engineers who provided some of the pictures for us.
On the other end of things, if you squeeze it and it disintegrates in your hand, that would also be a problem.
And that's why you want to do this before you need it. So,
yes,
exactly. And Kurt, that's a good point. These are backup systems, and we sometimes forget about our backup systems. It's like, oh, it's there, we're not going to worry about it. But when you need it the worst or the most, that's when you're going to have the worst problems. So it's important to stay on top of it.
So a lot of generator systems, well, most generator systems have a transfer switch. Sometimes it's manual, sometimes hopefully it's automatic on a bigger system. Even if you got a plug in the wall sort of generator, the fellow that used to live in my house had a backup generator, but it was the kind you wheel out of the garage and pull the ripcord and start it up. But there's a transfer switch here at my house of sorts. You turn a bunch of breakers off, you turn some other breakers on, and bam. Anyway, a lot of these have a key. So let's take a look at this graphic and remind us what to do.
Well, this is a neat idea. This works both inside on the transfer switch and also outside with the panels that are locked on the generator itself.
Hmm.
This engineer took a piece of wire and connected it to the key so that the key will never get lost. Even if you take it out of the lock, it's still going to be hanging there on that wire. And as far as the outside goes, tying the key to a big block of wood and have that somewhere maybe painted orange or something so you can see it, you know where it is, and have that hanging in the transmitter building so everybody knows where that is, will
Hmm.
eliminate problems, because you know how it's going to be when you're least expecting it. You're going to need to find that key to get inside, and you're not going to be able to have it, and it's just going to make your day a lousy day. So
And
this is trying
having that
to
key,
do things ahead of time.
having that key wired or attached near the transfer panel inside the building is not a safety hazard because the people inside the building are the people who are authorized to be there anyway. It's not like it's a general public area,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And as far as one of the best things I've seen lately is if you've got to have some information or a key and you've got to have it available at the transmitter site, one place you can hang it is on the back of the door, the main door to the
Oh, sure.
site.
Hmm.
And that way,
Absolutely.
well, of course, you've got to look and see and make sure you put it back. And you can hang a flag on it or whatever. You sure don't want to leave it laying around. A big orange flag or remove before flight kind of, warning
There you go. Exactly.
would be a good thing to have. But I've also seen placards on the back side of the door. Like, for example, maybe your building, maybe you've got a separate fence around the tower itself and it's got a combo lock. Well, on the back of the door, put a sign that says, tower fence combo lock combination is blah blah blah.
And
So
there it
people who
is.
are authorized to be in
Exactly.
the building also know what the combo is for the tower gate. All right, hey, next fuses or these they're oftentimes a big disconnect, right? To
There you go. That's right.
to attach this, and so let's take a look at this spare fuses. Oh my gosh, these fuses are not. You can't buy these at Walmart, right?
No, and that's when you're going to need them is, at the last minute. So you'll notice here that JT's got more than three. I mean, it's a three-phase circuit, but there's a couple of extra ones. So if you're losing fuses, you've got a couple of backups that you can use. So having more than what you normally would need would be a lot of good common sense. You
Now
don't
we're
want
gonna
to let
not.
a $3 fuse keep you off the air.
And by the way, are these $3 or are some of these a lot more expensive than that?
They can get a
I
lot
don't
more
know.
expensive.
It's
Well,
been.
there's
I've
one
seen
that's a
some
little
big ones that I
cheaper.
think. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said, no, yes, they are bigger, but I said you can also find a little cheaper fuse. I think you wanted to show that as well.
Well, yeah, but we're not going to show that yet. We're
Oh,
gonna hang
okay.
on. We're gonna hang on through an announcement first, because
Good
coming
deal.
up next, John Bisset is going to help you know whether you need to choose a Phillips screwdriver or a blade screwdriver in your temporary fuse replacement. That is coming up. If you haven't seen this picture, you got to hang around. This week in Radio Tech, I'm Kirk Harnack. John Bisset is our guest. We're talking about generator maintenance and how to make your life a lot easier and hopefully make sure that generator starts right up and provides power this winter. When somebody slides off the icy road, hits the telephone pole and knocks it over and your power's out for a couple of days. So that's what John's here to talk about. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Max Connect Wireless. And you've heard me talking about it, but I'm going to let Gary Morrill tell you something about Max Connect Wireless. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
We've got Gary and I have the same box exact. I got antennas on mine. This is a Cradle Point modem, but the modem ain't the key thing. It's the SIM cards inside, because it's Verizon network or Sprint network or AT&T network, but it's not your typical 4G LTE authorized card. It's on the Max Connect wireless network, which has priority. Check it out at maxconnectwireless.com. It's spelled funny because, all the good names are taken, and we'll have a link in the show notes, but you can use this to get service to transmitter sites that otherwise don't have internet service at all. You can take it to remotes and do audio, video remotes. So check it out from maxconnectwireless.com. Thanks a lot for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, John Bisset, we're back with you, and we're about to answer the big question about if you have an emergency fuse replacement and you're out of fuses. You didn't follow John's advice and have some spares on hand, but all you've got is a blade screwdriver or a Phillips screwdriver. Let's take a look at the graphic, and John, help us know which one to use.
You're not going to use either one of them. This is just unbelievable, isn't it? And I was joking with Kirk earlier. I guess we could call these slow blow fuses, because it's going to take a while for that metal to melt. No, this is just unbelievable that somebody would do this, and it's not worth it, folks. Please don't do this.
This is what I would call an alternative blow fuse, because something else is going to blow.
It's going to burn up. Yep, that's right. That's right. And I can guarantee you, if that did happen, the insurance company came in and saw this, I doubt that they would pay your insurance claim. So nothing is worth getting on the air that important to put something like that in there. But just unbelievable, the things that you see out in the field, isn't it?
Yeah. That's hilarious. And of course, I really didn't mean to, choose one or the other. The answer is neither one.
Neither. That's
the correct answer. It's not all of the above. It's neither. None of the above. So PowerPoint are typically filled with a lot of bullet points. The next slide is no exception. We got 4 bullet points. Let's look them over right here, right now. Have the name and number of your generator service company posted inside the building. Maybe we can see that next slide. Know how much, so the name and number of your generator service company posted in the building. So would you say that most broadcasters have a generator service company? Because the station I took care of for you, we didn't have a service company. I was the service company, and I didn't like it because I really wasn't very well qualified.
Well, they may not, and they may not have a generator, but these are all things that when you need them, you need them. And if it's your assistant that's gone out to the transmitter site and he doesn't have your Rolodex in your phone, or he doesn't have the names of all of these companies readily available, he's there without ability to do anything to solve the problem. So you want to think ahead. What are you going to need ahead of time? And having the information on the generator service company, also the fuel delivery company, if you use either propane or diesel fuel, being able to make sure that the fuel delivery company knows where your site is, and you've got a contact there, and they understand that you're a primary distributor for power. If you need to get if you need fuel, that you're going to be able to be on the air and stay on the air with the deliveries of the fuel.
You mentioned that it's a good idea to know how much fuel your generator uses every hour.
That helps just to be able to calculate how often you've got to fill the tanks. A number of years ago, we were contracting with a station that was off the air for over a week, and we had to lug jerry cans of fuel in from the street because they were like 3-foot diameter trees had fallen down over the access road. There was no way to get inside. And, it's one of these things where, do you fill it up once a day? Do you fill it up twice a day? Do you have to fill it up more often than that? So knowing how much fuel is burned and how much fuel you've got in the generator tank is really important.
You already mentioned make sure the delivery company knows how to get to your site. And I guess, delivery companies go through drivers. They may have a backup substitute driver. So, I live in a house that's a little bit hard to find by my street address. I like it that way. But so if I just give somebody my street address, you're not guaranteed to find my house. You'll find my mailbox, but I don't live at my mailbox, and you can't see the house from the mailbox. So whenever I have to call an Uber or a Lyft, I always make sure I give a phone call to that driver and say, hey, I'm sure you're a very experienced driver. Your GPS is going to lead you right to my mailbox. I don't live there. Here's where I live. Same
That's
thing
good.
for same thing for your fuel delivery company. Make sure that maybe they have on file, or maybe you can get the phone number of the driver and give them a heads up when they're on their way out.
And Kirk, another one that's probably wise to put on the back of the door is your sheriff or police and emergency folks like fire department, ambulance, that sort of thing. Make sure they know where you are and how to get there. If you have an emergency, they're not. Oh, I see the tower, but I don't know how to get back to the tower. So make sure they have that information.
There's a lot of that. And hey, we as engineers, we know how to get to our tower sites. As a drone pilot, if I'm on a trip, if I see a tower, I love stopping and going and flying around the towers. And I drove by some towers, yesterday actually. And I didn't know they were there. I didn't know there was a station there. There's a 4-tower directional array, but I also didn't know how to get in there. And I looked real quick at my Google Maps and I thought, it could be a couple ways. I didn't want to spend the time to go look. Same thing for your sheriff. They may see the towers or the tower, but they may not know how to get there. And it may seem obvious to us, not obvious to everybody.
And Kirk, point. One other thing too that is worth mentioning, if you've got station swag, T-shirts, coffee cups, whatever, gift cards, keep a stash of those at the transmitter site. And when a repair person comes, whether it's the generator guy or the air conditioning guy or even the police, toss a few T-shirts their way. They won't forget it. And here's the deal here. No one else does this. So if you're doing it, they're going to remember you. And when you need something done in a hurry, and hey, remember, or how are those T-shirts? Are you enjoying those T-shirts? Believe me, it works. It really does work. And if you're third or fourth down on the list for a service call and you've taken care of these service people, you better believe they'll move you up on the list.
I may or may not have gotten out of a speeding ticket one time by promising the state trooper that I would play his favorite song as soon as I got to the radio station.
Did you?
Well, I think the statute of limitations had gone on by. That was 30 plus years ago. So yeah, that happened.
Very good.
It used to be that we kept station tchotchke around for the phone guy, for the Bell South or the Ohio Bell or whoever it was, there to equalize our phone lines or fix the metering line. But we have other people that are interested and could use that. And test the generator weekly. Right. And why do you think weekly is a good schedule?
Well, I think just so that if there's a problem, it's not on a monthly basis, and it's not something that whatever the problem is you've been without the generator for that period of time. So if it's every week and there's a failure one week, well, then that, okay, if it's mice that have gotten inside and they've chewed something up, or there's a leak in the fluids or something like that, you're able to get in there and get it corrected. You're not showing up a week or 2 months later and finding out, the generator won't start, and this is when I really need it. So having it done on a regular basis makes sense. And
a lot of generators, you can program a weekly test in there anyway, so it happens automatically. Absolutely. And modern ones can give a contact closure, or a lot of modern ones even have a cell phone, a modem, a wireless modem built in that they will notify you.
Or an app that allows you to know when the transmitter or when the generator is on the air.
Yeah. Good point. You've got and there's a very good tip about IP cameras coming up. So we won't fast forward into that, but I do want to mention that this is a great idea. So coming up, you mentioned mice a minute ago. Let's talk about critters in the next slide. We'll take a look at some extra mesh that's been put on, because those holes provided for ventilation from the generator design company, those are way too big, aren't they?
Boy, they sure are. A mouse could get in there very easily. This picture came from Stephanie Donnell up in New Hampshire at New Hampshire Public Radio, and she's put this screening on all of the entry points on where the air ventilation was for their generators. The regular door screening is a little too small, but this hardware cloth, I think, is another term for it. And just cutting a piece and putting it over the entry points so air can still get inside, can still circulate, but the little rodents will not be able to get inside there. Remember, they would love to be in here, especially in colder climes where they want to stay warm or stay out of the elements, and this does a real good job of keeping them out.
I would try to find that in metal if you can, but if it's some kind of strong nylon, that could be okay. Although I think a mouse might chew through that. Look like those might have been even a quarter or 3/8 inch squares. They look
Sure,
a little bit
yes.
smaller than ½ inch, but yeah, about that size, obviously. And if you would look again at the screws here, it looks like some self-tapping screws were used to
There you
attach
go.
this, and washers to cover a good either a whole hole,
Yes.
all of a hole, or a good part of it to
There you
give it
go.
some
Yeah,
hold there.
that's it. And spacing them around so that it would be pretty difficult for an animal of any kind to pull the hardware screen away and get inside there. So no, she did a real good job with this on all their generators.
Mm-hmm. The next two slides show some real vulnerabilities that come standard with a lot of generators, and we have to fix those. Let's take a look at this next one that shows an open, a good opening to the outside. Who knows? Maybe something's missing, a panel's missing, but whatever it is, that's got to be fixed. That if you can reach your hand out there and see the outside, so can a raccoon.
There you go. And Kirk, what the deal is that almost all generators that I've seen are like this because they're usually mounted on a flat slab of concrete. In this case, the generator was suspended about 3 feet in the air because of flooding. So they've got a pillar system with 4x4s and it's basically a dock, if you will, that the generator sits on. But the problem with it is that it's open underneath. So again, what they did was lay down the hardware cloth before the generator was placed there, so that there's no chance of anything getting up inside. But then the question comes up: what do you do with the power and the fuel coming in? There's got to be a penetration there. So
yeah, let's look at the next slide.
Something to consider as well.
See about that. It's not necessarily neat, but you do need to seal this up.
Absolutely, and sealing it up with any kind of expanding foam, but using steel wool, stainless steel wool, or copper wool, which does not rust. And mice and rodents do not like chewing through that stuff. If you just use the spray foam, they'll chew right through it. It won't be any deterrent at all. So make sure that you do that. But you can see you get a little bit better feel for the grass that's underneath and the ability that something or someone could actually reach up inside there. And in that other picture, they could have stolen the battery if there wasn't something to dissuade them from getting inside the generator itself.
I hate it when a family of raccoons steals the battery.
You wonder what they use it for.
Batteries are valuable, and yeah, they can. No, if it'll start a generator, guess what? It may start a tractor or a diesel rig too. So,
oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, aside from sealing that up, and that takes some time, effort, ingenuity. You may have to come up with your own solutions. But I'm glad what you said about not using regular steel wool, because that stuff will rust in a heartbeat. The stainless steel wool or the copper steel wool. Great ideas there.
Correct.
And
right.
and then there's another area of entrance for rodents. Let's look at the next slide. It's knockouts.
Yeah, these are great to have if you're running a conduit in and out, but it's also a possibility that one of these could get jostled out or not gnawed out by a rodent, I guess, because they're only made out of plastic. But this is part of your inspection, walking around, looking at the all of the knockouts to make sure that they're all sealed and that all of the entrance points are sealed up.
So something that amazed me, and I really hadn't given it any thought at all until you provided this picture. a well-installed generator outside will have some PVC or maybe metal conduit from the outside coming on into the inside, right? For
Right.
your control wires and for the power coming into the transfer switch. And those, did you ever have one of those hamster or gerbil cages that had tunnels, from one room
Oh,
to
there you
another?
go. Yes.
And your happy
Right.
little rodents would run along the tunnels, and from one room to another. Well, guess what a piece of conduit is? Let's take a look. This is, we can see the beginnings of it. If we get Suncast. There we go. There's a little bit of a hint that maybe something's amiss. All right.
We want to say what's behind door number 2.
Well, I'm seeing that hay, that straw.
Yes, absolutely. Down there on that box
thinking,
underneath the disconnect.
Hey, how'd that straw get in here? Well, let's look at the next picture and we'll see where the straw came from.
Isn't this unbelievable?
Oh,
how this didn't catch fire, man, I just don't know. And this is something, you clear it out, and the problem is that rodents don't have anything else to do except build. And so if you clean this out, but you don't plug those holes and prevent them from being able to get back in, the next day it'll be just like this again. So it is really crazy, isn't it? Just unreal what those little animals will do.
They're industrious, aren't they?
They really are. They really are. And the key is that they aren't industrious at your transmitter site or even your studio site, because they could certainly get in from the outside there as well.
Yeah. Squirrels too. Squirrels can make a mess. I just had a neighbor here in our neighborhood posted a picture on one of those neighbors or next door kind of apps, and they had recently been in their attic, and they had a beautiful attic with all the blown-in insulation. It was nice and smooth, except for over in one corner there was a 4-foot-tall mound of the blown-in insulation, all mounded up, and nobody knew quite positively for sure what it was, but the overwhelming majority of commenters says, you got squirrels up there. Yeah. Just a big family of squirrels wanting to stay, multi-level apartment condos.
Boy, isn't that the truth? And Kirk, speaking of the mice, one of the things to consider here is around your transmitter building perimeter and around the generator is to clear that whole area, put down the gardening cloth that will prevent weeds from growing, and then lay on top of that a lot of crushed gravel. These animals do not like to be out in the open, and if you prevent the grass from growing up next to the generator or growing up next to the building, it will greatly reduce the chances of snakes and rodents from getting into your transmitter site or into your generator.
That's a great point. And you notice that and I know the cellular industry, at least I perceive them as tending to maybe take better care of their sites and their buildings, a little better grounding than I see at broadcast sites. You don't typically see weeds growing up around cell site buildings. No. They're clear. They do it all right. I don't know if they still sell it at farm supply stores, but I used to use Pramitol, and because it supposedly sterilizes the ground. And if I put Pramitol down, and don't use your bare hands like I did. I probably got some dread disease from, handling Pramitol. Use gloves. But I would put down Pramitol all around the tower site. Didn't have a weed for 5 years. Nothing. So,
man, that's great. That's really good.
Don't put it on your garden. It is not fertilizer. I know a lot of folks use what's the big weed killer everybody uses? I'm not thinking of it right now.
Roundup.
Roundup, yeah, and that works for a few months, but you got to reapply it and reapply it and reapply it. And Pramitol, man, that's what farmers put along a fence line, and nothing comes up for a while. But the garden cloth, as you mentioned, and gravel on top of that, I'd still use Pramitol on top of all that.
That's good.
John, coming up, we're going to look at some incredible damage caused by cold, hard falling water. That's coming up in just a few minutes, and we'll get your ideas on how to prevent that from hurting your equipment. Our show This Week in Radio Tech, it's our 509th episode. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tobin can't be here today, but John Bisset is our guest today. Our show is brought to you in part by Broadcasters General Store, and they represent the guy. Hank Landsberg of Henry Engineering, and one of their latest products is the Henry Superlight. It's an LED tally light controller. It's a logic and control interface for controlling low voltage studio tally lights. Now, this is not for running 110 volt lights somewhere, although you can get a closure out of it, and you can then go run a relay if you want to. If you're going to do that, you might as well get the Henry Super Relay. You know, that's been around with us for a good 30 plus years or so. But this can directly power 12-volt DC LED lights that draw up to half an amp, up to 500 milliamps. It includes a flasher circuit as well as a double-pole, double-throw relay output that can be used for any low-voltage switching. You can use it for speaker muting. Maybe you're using a little console that doesn't do speaker muting. You can use it for that, or any other utility use. I mean, you could even wire it up like we used to the motor on your cassette deck to make an air check tape. The LED output can, as I said, do 12 volts at half an amp. It can also sync up to 1 amp if you use it with an external power source. So maybe you've got several LEDs to run. It's over 500 milliamps. You can still use the Superlight. Just use an external 12-volt supply, and this will sync up to 1 amp. As I mentioned, you can set it to flash when it's on with the on-air warning lights. All the control, relay output, and LED output connectors are available with plug-in Euroblock connectors. They're easy to use. And there's 2 RJ45 connectors to provide for control wiring compatibility with, for example, the Wheatnet IP Blade and other similar installations that use Cat5, Cat6 wiring, like the Axia X nodes as well. And as I mentioned, before the show, we were talking here. Before the show, I took the screws out of this. So the top comes off. Here's the inside. If you're watching on TV, here's the inside, and it's got these header jumpers right here. You can assign an address, if you will, to each box, and you can daisy chain these. Let's say you've got a whole row of studios down the hallway. You can run these one after another, from one studio to the next, and each one can be programmed, when to close, when to activate the Henry Superlight. Hank Landsberg has great ideas that help us out in broadcasting all the time, and the Henry Superlight is just the latest in that series. And you know where you can get these? At Broadcasters General Store. Now, their address is easy. It's bgs.cc, bgs.cc. And, they really specialize in the telephone. And in these days of COVID, a friendly voice on the other end of the phone is a good thing. Give them a call at 352-622-7700. I've been calling BGS for literally probably 35 years now. I remember started doing a lot of business with BGS, Broadcasters General Store, when I was doing engineering for Sam Phillips in Memphis, Tennessee. And Sam would say, "Hey, Kurt, call that pretty girl Candy down there and get her on the phone, tell her to sharpen her pencil." So we would order all kinds of things from Broadcaster General Store. Thanks a lot, Henry and Engineering and Broadcaster General Store, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 509th episode. I'm Kirk Harnack, and John Bisset is our guest, and we are rolling through generator maintenance, some things you haven't thought of. Don't use Phillips or blade screwdrivers, and keep the rodents out. That's really important. Otherwise, they'll make a playground out of your generator setup. John,
sure.
Next, a lot of the towers in the U.S. do have to worry about occasional icing. I mean, even my stations in Mississippi get icing on the towers once in a while. And when that ice sheds, when it comes off, it's a dangerous thing. It can be heavy, and it can be moving at 100 miles an hour or more. So I think we
really
have,
thinks about that. I say nobody really thinks about that this stuff is heavy, and it could kill you if it hits you. So I would say that's the first thing. If you've got an icing situation and the ice is starting to melt, stay away from the transmitter site, because no radio station is worth giving your life to. And as you'll see here, this stuff can be pretty dangerous, what it can do.
So let's take a look at the next picture, a generator ice shield. So this is obviously somebody has prepared for the ice by building this over the generator. Obviously we got some strong vertical poles here, but what's the nature of the expanded metal? How do you get that stuff?
That's just a regular ice bridge, Kirk, and they just took 2 pieces of ice bridge and bolted them together, and it serves as a cover for the generator. What's not shown in the picture, though, and it's a good point to bring up, is the conduits coming out of the generator that have the power and the control circuitry and so forth, there's an ice bridge on that as well, because again, you don't want ice coming down and snapping a conduit and damaging the cable that way. So anyway, just a neat idea if you're in an area that's prone to a lot of icing.
Let's take a look at the next picture, which shows a bridge that has gotten clobbered by falling ice.
The arrow, and this is what I was talking about how dangerous this is. That bridge was straight. It was a horizontal bridge that went right over to the tower, and you can see the V that has been caused by ice falling. Fortunately, it saved the cables. The cables were not severed, but it really did a number on the ice bridge. So, who would want that hitting them on the head or the shoulder? I mean, I think it would be the last thing you'd feel. So it's a good reason why you want to have an ice bridge.
Yeah, boy, it's amazing that the cables weren't damaged, but that's what the ice bridge did. It gave up its rigidity there to save the cables underneath it.
Absolutely, that's it.
And it's a good scale there. There's a person there standing on the ground. So
absolutely,
you can
yes. Get an idea of the size perspective. Exactly.
That's a big STL dish right there. That looks like an 8-foot STL dish, maybe.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So the next picture is a great idea that I think any of us could implement pretty easily, and that has to do with site security. And you mentioned position an outdoor camera to look at the generator and help me understand why that could be really helpful to you remotely.
Well, and this again goes back to Mr. Tucker. We thank him for this. The deal is that his front door is to the left of the generator, the green generator that you see there. So the camera was set up in such a way that it shows the front door and the porch going into the front door of the transmitter site, but it also encompasses the exhaust port on the generator. And the exhaust ports all have a little flapper valve. Well, when that generator is running, the flapper valve is going to be open, and he can see, using his camera, he can see whether or not the generator is running. So even though he may have full remote control and all kinds of information on his phone, he can go to his IP camera and take a peek if there's a problem, and he can say, okay, well, at least I know the generator's running, the power must be down. So it gives you some pretty good feel that there's a problem there and just what the problem is. Plus, if there's somebody running around in the transmitter building area, you're able to see that, catch that on camera as well. I thought that was a neat idea, a neat way of doing that.
And I would think, that at a remote site, an outdoor generator itself, probably inside a fence, but an outdoor generator is going to be a focus of somebody who's up to no good, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Hey, they think, hey, there's valuable stuff. At least there's a battery in there. Or you might see
exactly.
You might see a black bear siphoning fuel.
You never know what you're going to see at a transmitter site. You and I both know that.
Speaking of never know what you're going to see, I'm scratching my head over your next suggestion here. This is one of these micro USB endoscopes. Let's have a look at that. Now, why do you need this?
Okay, you remember doing work on a transmitter and having to get in behind a piece of iron, a transformer, or in behind a tube, or behind the chimney on a tube, and you can stick your phone in there maybe and take a picture. But this little endoscope, I mean, it's so reasonably priced. We joke when I show this to the SBE presentations that if you need some side money, you can always open up a endoscopy clinic. But no, not really. But that's what this was sold for. I guess somebody must use it for that. But it's basically a camera with a light on the end of it, and you plug it into your phone, and you can see the image. So if you're sticking it down a drain to see if there's a problem down a drain or into a piece of conduit, whatever the case may be, it's giving you eyes that you can't normally have because of the constrictions of whatever may be in the way. So just a neat idea, something that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, that is one of your bag of tricks that you carry along with you as you go from one station to another.
That is actually is a great idea. And so many times I've needed to see behind something. In order to get there, I've got to take something else out. And what if you could just say, no, well, look, there is a crack there, or, oh, there's a carbon track across there, or there's a screw loose right there.
There you go.
Now it's worthwhile to remove the parts that you weren't sure if you're going to have to remove. Or, no, that's not the problem. Let's look elsewhere.
Well, and
Good point.
Kirk, one of the other things that's good about this, same thing with your cell phone camera. If you have to find a part and you're not sure, there's no part labeled or part number on it, you can email a picture, either the endoscope picture or the picture from your cell phone, to the transmitter parts department and say, this is the part, this is where it is, this is what I need. And then they're able to go ahead and send you the right component. So, using your cell phone for this kind of work really makes a lot of sense.
Good idea. And and they are about $20. You can find them on Amazon. I've also seen them on those really cheap Chinese sites like wish.com or geek.com or the Alibaba Express, ali.com, I believe, or AliExpress. Yeah. So there's places you can get them there and on Amazon as well. By the way, on the outdoor camera thing, there's a plethora of outdoor cameras available. And I have fallen for buying some of the cheaper ones that weren't as well known. And then the app support went away. So I've got 5 cameras right now at Delta Radio, and the app no longer works on my phone. And the replacement app, I haven't gotten to work with it either. So I was just going to say, I've actually had really good luck with the Wyze, WYZE cameras. They are coming out with a model that is intended for outdoor use, but even barring that, you can use the indoor camera with an outdoor enclosure. They do work on Wi-Fi only, so you got to have Wi-Fi at your transmitter site if you're going to use them. But we've put some of those to use at transmitter sites. I've also put them to use at rental property that we have, and even on the back deck here at the house. So I can tell if the cats are getting attacked by a mountain lion here. I'm kind of not kidding.
Kirk, I was able to visit one of our customers in Hawaii a few months back before COVID started up, and they had placed the cameras in the transmitter building to look at the transmitter itself. So before he even leaves for the transmitter site, he knows what alarms are on, what may have tripped, or what the problem might be. So, again, they can be invaluable for giving you information before you actually get to the site, so you know what you're going to need.
I'm so impressed. Here's a Wyzecam, and it's $20 if you buy it from the website directly, Wyze.com. That's a $20 camera, and the app is free. And you put a $10 SD card in it. It'll record movement or record continuously if you want. And they offer Wyze offers a free service. They will record in the cloud. Like if there's movement, they'll record a 12-second clip. That's free. I think you can pay them for longer clips, but honestly, you can also just put the SD card in there and go watch it directly off the SD card. For whatever reason, their SD card implementation and watching it back sometimes is a little clunky, but hey, it's a $20 camera, but it's a well-supported $20 camera with a company that does seem to be going places. So,
very good.
Yeah. I can kind of recommend. There's a lot of brands out there, and there's a lot of cameras that are better than the Wyze cameras, but I don't know there's anything that can touch it for $20, and I've had really good luck with them. Oh, speaking of cameras, infrared is a good way to look at things. So why don't you tell us about that?
This is really neat. Now, this is a little more expensive. It's close to $250, but it's manufactured by a company called FLIR, F-L-I-R, and this plugs into your smartphone, and it gives you the ability to look at whatever the camera on your phone is pointing to. It's actually going to be transposing it into temperature. So I think you have the next slide that shows an example of that.
Let's take a look at the next one. Oh, there. Okay.
This was courtesy of Mr. Welton, Jeff Welton. He has one of these, and he takes these to all of the transmitter sites he goes to. There I was at a convention sitting, working on my computer on the left there. And then on the right is a picture of a electric box and a breaker that is overheating. And this is where this becomes really, really helpful. You can spot problems before anything happens. And the last thing you need, especially in a multi-breaker panel box, is to have a breaker catch fire and catch the whole thing on fire. You're going to be down for a long period of time. So being able to take these kind of pictures and then store them and come back 6 months later, take another set of pictures and compare the images to see whether or not there is an increase in heating is just a really great idea. And it's a way for you to go about providing maintenance. One of the things for the folks that are doing contract engineering, I'll suggest, is offer this as a service to your clients. I don't know which charge, depending on what your hourly rate is, but if you give them a report that has some images in there of the breakers at the studio and the breakers at the transmitter site, and if there is something that needs to be repaired, you may be able to repair it for them. But either way, it's an insurance policy that on that date, all of the breakers were tight, everything was working fine, you weren't running into a problem with anything overheating that could cause a fire later.
You know, as a former contract engineer, I could easily see myself making a small upcharge for this service. Like, I'm going to charge my hourly rate, but I'm also going to do a survey of your building to look for any hot spots, any potential problems. And, you know, I have no idea what you want to charge. If you want to charge $30 or $80 or $300. But my point is, if you do a few of them, you'll pay for that camera. And hey, if the customer called an electrician out well, first of all, you probably wouldn't call them out till after the fire occurred. So there's a lot of damage right there. But on a preemptive basis, if you call an electrician out who is even so equipped, there'd be quite a substantial charge, higher than what you as a contract engineer might just add on to help pay for that camera. So
there you go. And Kirk, I guess the key is with the generators, it's really a great idea because while the generator is running, you can take a look and see if there are any hot spots in the generator, if there's spark plugs, wires that are not fitting tight, if the battery terminals are not on there tight, if there's a heating problem in the block heater or something like that. You'll be amazed at the various places that you can take this little infrared camera and do inspections. And another place that's really neat are coil clips on an AM coil and capacitors. Think of a mica cap that's about ready to explode, and you've got all that oil and tar all over the inside of your phaser or your ATU, and you catch it before that happens. You'll be able to just shine the FLIR detector on it and see that it's hotter than any of the others, and you go ahead and get it replaced. Call up Kintronics and get a replacement cap.
Great idea, because you sure can't touch those things while they're hot with AM, and it's even hard to schedule. Okay, shut the transmitter off. Is it off? Good, it's off. Put the grounding stick on. Now let me go around and touch all the capacitors. That's a bunch of hassle. Shoot it with a FLIR infrared camera, and bam, there you go. There's another thing you should do for your own safety besides not touching hot RF. Let's take a look at this picture about this safety pen. I think
this was really neat. Yeah, the TAB, Texas Association of Broadcasters, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, gave these out to every attendee at their show. And that was when I first saw this. And it's really neat. It's an inductive pin. The tip of it glows red whenever it comes into contact with alternating current. So even though the breaker may be off, sometimes the different sections or poles of the breaker don't completely close. And when that happens, or don't open up rather, and if that happens and one is closed and you've got your hand inside the transmitter, you're taking a chance of getting electrocuted, even though the breaker itself may be thrown. So something like this, it's your life is worth $30, and you can buy one of these things at Amazon, and just make it a point of checking whenever you put your hand into something that you've checked it with the volt pen to see that there's no voltage present.
I have known actually I've known one guy who was electrocuted on a site, and he was standing in some puddle in a puddle outdoors. He had an outdoor cable, and it was only 125 volts. But man,
Wow.
that stopped his heart, and he died right there. Then I've certainly, maybe you have known, I have known of broadcast engineers typically working alone, and grabbed hold of the wrong thing. They thought it was de-energized, and it wasn't, and they're not with us anymore. They're gone. So yeah, that makes it worthwhile. And I'm glad you pointed that out about you can turn breakers off, especially the ones that are in an electrical panel that I think are typically cheaper than the one you saw on the front of that looks like a Continental transmitter. That
That's
one's a pretty
correct.
expensive breaker, but you can turn some breakers off, and sure enough, if it's hung up inside, it's possible for it to still be there. And I think we're probably pretty done with them, but there have been transmitters made that had two sets of breakers, a three-phase breaker and a single-phase breaker, and you had to get them both to totally
Do both of
de-energize
them.
the transmitter.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, those are good points.
So I've got one more hint here, and it's here I have a magic mouse from Apple, but you've got a bag of something else there called Mouse Magic.
This, I like listening to garden shows, and there's a guy who did a garden show up in New England that talked about this stuff. This is manufactured by Bonide, Bonide, and it's really neat, Kirk. It smells wonderful. It's a pepperminty odor, and they're like little sachets that you lay around in the bottom of racks and on the floor of your transmitter building, or even in your generator, for that matter, on the floor of the generator. Mice hate the smell, and it will repel them. It's just amazing. If you go online, get onto YouTube, and maybe enter mouse repellent or mouse magic, they'll show where they've laid some of this stuff in a cage with mice, and they put one of these packets in one corner, and the mice are all huddled in the opposite corner. I mean, they can't get far enough away from this stuff. So, and the other benefit is that it smells great. I mean, it's a nice pepperminty smell. Who doesn't like peppermint? So, it's just a real good way of getting your mice out of the building, out of the equipment, and leaving a nice minty fresh smell.
Well, I'm glad that mice don't like that. And I got to order some of these for the house because winter's coming, and we've got a part of the basement that mice do get into. And I'm going to get a couple I found them, they're on Amazon, 12 pack for about $22.49. It'll be at your house in a couple of days. So yeah, and a number of different sellers have them. So, look for the best price there. But wow,
there you
Mouse
go.
Magic.
And Kirk, a point with that too is that they last for a couple of months. Now I don't know if you're in a house where doors are opening and closing and all like that, but in a building where it's mostly closed all the time, they will last a longer period of time. So, but they're like 2 or 3 in a box. So they give you a few that you can, and they're sealed in plastic. So until you rip the plastic, it doesn't really activate it. So they'll last for a period of time.
Remember, it's not a magic mouse; it's Mouse Magic. I'll put a link to that in the. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And let's see. I'll tell you what, we're going to hit the last slide at the end of the show after our tips of the week.
Very fine.
John Bisset is with us. It's episode 509 of This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. And our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Angry Audio. They are they own Studio Hub. If you want some Studio Hub adapters, dongles, cables, even gear like headphone amps and so forth, you can get them now, and you can get them at 20% off. Everything Studio Hub is 20% off. Now, you can go to their website and fill out this little form, first name, last name, and email, hit subscribe, use promo code GETREAL20 with any dealer to get 20% off all genuine Studio Hub products. You don't have to settle for, a knockoff product. You get genuine Studio Hubs. This stuff is well designed. It works well. I've put in literally hundreds and hundreds of dollars because I've put in so much Studio Hub. Here's an example. If you haven't used Studio Hub gear, really easy because Cat5 cable is so easy to run and terminate, and it's got a great twist to it. So it's got fantastic common mode rejection. Cat5 cable works great for AES digital audio, AES EBU, or also known as AES3. It works great for analog audio, even long runs of analog audio. It's balanced, as long as you have it balanced at both ends, and it's just got great common mode rejection. So the bottom line is use Cat5 or Cat6 cable for audio runs, digital or analog, and use Studio Hub cable adapters to get into and out of your professional equipment. Works really, really well. And now they're 20% off. This is the kind that I like. They've got the female RJ45 jack right there, and this hangs on the back of your equipment, and then you run this from the equipment over to wherever you're going. Could be on the back of an Axie node, for example, and it'll plug right in. However, if you just got a little short run to make and you're already there with your RJ, there you go. This is meant for AES EBU because it's one jumper like that. We also have here's a stereo one meant for analog audio, left-right audio into the RJ45 male jack. And, it doesn't have to be XLR. Here's one that's got tip ring sleeve 1/4-inch connectors balanced into the RJ45 connector. And you can even get long ones. This one here is about 6 feet long. It's coiled up. I'm not going to undo it, but it's got a male RJ on one end and male XLRs. You can get male or female or whatever connector you like. This 20% off, though, also includes Studio Hub headphone amps, Studio Hub power supplies, all the distribution panels, all that stuff, Studio Hub. Go to angryaudio.com and go to the Studio Hub pages for Angry Audio. All that stuff, 20% off, makes it a great deal, very affordable, and you're not going to save any money by going to the off-brand. You can get real Studio Hub, buy the right stuff, and Bob's your uncle. There you go. Check it out. GetReal20 is the promo code. Thanks a lot to Angry Audio for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Well, it's time for our tip of the week. And I've got a little tip of the week here. Of course, I once again have failed to warn our guest that I expect a tip of the week. So I'm going to give John Bisset a minute to think about that. I may have given this tip before, but I've got to give it again. When I took earlier this afternoon, just before the show, actually, I took the screws out of this Superlight from Henry Engineering, and they're little black screws. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have a mouse pad on my desk here that's literally 2.5 feet long and 1.5 feet wide. And I thought, I'm going to lose these screws on this black desk pad, mouse pad thing. So I went to the garage and I got my magnetic Pittsburgh Automotive parts tray right here. It's got a magnet in the bottom and it just holds your parts right in there. I love this thing. You can toss parts in there all day long and you won't lose any. And it's rubberized on the bottom too. So you can set it on your workbench. It won't tip over at all, and it won't slide off. It does the job really well. And you can sometimes get these for free at Harbor Freight. Sometimes they have a coupon for a free one. Of course, if there's a coupon for a free one, you get to Harbor Freight and they probably don't have any more of them. So I would go ahead and pay the $3 or $4 or whatever they cost to just get you one. And see those 4 screws right there? Those go into the Henry Superlight. So when the show's over, I'm going to put them back in there. And I didn't lose them. There they are. They didn't fall under somewhere on my desk, underneath a laptop or underneath a speaker or my M audio adapter or into my cup of green tea. They're right here. John Bisset, do you have a tip available for us?
Yeah, I got a couple. Well, first off, 2 things I'd like to talk about, Kirk. I think it's really neat that when you use those magnetic screw holders, it will magnetize the screws a little bit, which means they'll hold on or stick on to the screwdriver as you're trying to put them back into where they belong. So that makes it sort of a little side benefit. I've seen muffin trays used for putting your screws and nuts and parts that you disassemble, all of that very, very, very helpful. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, going back to the Angry Audio adapters, isn't it neat how you can build a studio in a couple of hours? Remember how many weeks it would take us to run cables and to punch everything down? And with the dongles from Angry Audio, now you're able to plug everything in, and it's like no time at all. So your
Mhm.
labor charges go way, way down when you're going AOIP and using the dongles from Angry Audio.
That's true. I was, in fact, I was having an email back and forth today with our friend Andy Linton in Ireland,
Okay.
and I've been all over Ireland with Andy. It's a great place, and he even wrote up a little story about how he was going to build some new studios for a customer, and he was literally planning on miles of cable and punch blocks and all that stuff, and 3 months of labor, and he did it all with Cat5 cable, Studio Hub, and he happened to use Axia gear in there, all the nodes and consoles and so forth. He said it was literally 3 weeks, and it was literally one box of Cat5 cable, and no punch downs and stuff. They just ran the stuff where it had to go, and it was just delightful. Worked great. And by the way, while you were talking, I emptied my tray of screws, and I put them back in here, and I didn't lose a single one.
And you didn't lose any.
That's amazing for me.
That's really
Not
great.
a single one.
Yeah, I think that would be the tip, Kirk. If you haven't explored AOIP, whether it's Telos or Wheat Zone, you need to take a look at this stuff. And if you got a few gray hairs on your head and you say, "Man, this is more than I can handle," it's really, really simple. So don't throw it out because it's foreign to you. It's very, very easy to learn, and it's something that will save you an awful lot of time.
Hey, if Suncast, if the last slide is available for you to pop up, we can tell people where they can get more information about John Bisset and his workbench. Go to radioworld.com and go to look for Workbench and click the subscribe button, and you'll get newsletters, including John Bisset's workbench. Right?
Yeah, the column is free. The newspaper, Radio World, is free to subscribe. So, there is a subscribe button on there. So hit that. Make sure you're getting a complimentary copy of it. One thing I would suggest is you put your home address in. It's funny. Radio World shows up at the radio station and someone else sees it and they grab it and you never find your copy of Radio World again. So put the call letters of your station, but put your home address on there so that it's coming to your personal mail instead of the radio station mail. That way you'll be
John
sure
Bisset,
to get it all the time.
That's good advice, and yeah, have it. And I get 2 copies here at the house. I think one for Delta Radio and one for Telos, but I got several hats I put on. We got to go, John. Thank you so much for taking a time to be with us. We look forward to having you on about 3 or 4 times a year. You're always so full of great information. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kirk. Had a good time.
Me too. Thanks also to Suncast, the producer of our show. Thank you, Suncast, for keeping up with all those graphics, making the show look good, despite our best efforts. And also thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, home of lots of great podcasts. We got to run. Coming up next week, we've got another great show. And if I could just take 5 seconds to go look and see what's going on. Oh, yeah. Video in the radio studio has become quite a thing. And a lot of that depends just on the good design of the system that you have. And Multicam Systems is going to be talking about how to set up your cameras, how to get the good shots, how to make sure it looks interesting and it's not stale looking. That's coming up next week. So we'll have Multicam Systems on with advice about turning your radio studio into a TV studio and not do bad TV, but do good TV. All right, we got to run. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.